The photographs in the show were all shot over the last 3 years on the south coast of Guatemala, which is the Pacific coast. And I photographed both the ocean and the sand, or rather the effects of the ocean when it hits the land, as well as the mangroves and the mangrove forest in the same area, near Monterrico and then a little further down the coast near Salvador. Most of them are done there over the last 3 years. But I have to say the project really started about 25 years ago when I was doing research for an installation I was doing in New York City of endangered species. My work as a visual artist is a dialogue. It's a dialogue between myself, the subject, the media that I use, which in this case was photography, and then there's you. And all of those elements come into play when I create something. I think about who is going to see this. And I'll explain how some of those decisions were made in this work so you can see sort of the process of my thinking. I'm not a photographer. I don't consider myself a photographer. I'm not trained as a photographer, though this work is, I'm using photography in this. I consider myself a visual artist. So I work in whatever media seems right in the moment of what it is that I'm addressing. What I wanted to do was create a space that you didn't really enter into, a stagnant space. And of course, I'm not photographing a stagnant subject. It's a very loud subject. It's a very active subject. So I wanted to create something that would allow us to feel that we were experiencing sacred space. Because water is sacred. We're born in water. And so I wanted to create something that helped us experience that. That's why the pieces are squares. I photograph in the morning, and I photograph late in the afternoon to get the cool light and the warm light. But I also work with photography, processing the images. I work with them as if it were a palette, a paint box, because my strongest training is as a painter. So I work with it as if it were a paint box, and I can play with it since I'm not trained as a photographer. It's not problem or soul searching for me to play with the rules that we learn as photographers. I don't have a problem cropping my image to create the feeling that I want, or even pushing the color in a direction to facilitate the statement that I want to evoke. I wanted the title WaterMarks, Sellos de Agua, so that it had both languages. If you notice the images, they're really all about water and what it's touching. In the mangroves, there's a lot about reflection. It's very much about water and what it's touching and the effect that has. So when you look at these closely, for example, you'll see the sand. I'm just fascinated by the sand, by the water as it recedes from the shore, as the wave recedes. And the way the water, and you all know this, you want to walk on the sand that's wet but not wet, right? You want it moist because it's hard, but not the really wet sand, because then you sink in. It's the easiest. It's right there along the edge between where the sand is dry and where it's still wet. Well, that process of the wet sand drying out is just gorgeous. And when you look at these images close up, I want you to see how there's almost metallic quality to that shine, especially with the black sand that Guatemala has. It's very different photographing here than it would be in the Bahamas, say, or in the Atlantic. So that's why it's WaterMarks, and it's about relationship. Again, the diptychs are about relationship, and the relationship, I think, is an extremely important quality for us as human beings. And so I wanted to reflect that in the title. Sellos de Agua is not just agua, but it's, you know, it's the WaterMarks. It's the water and the mark that's left, and the combination. There were different kinds of waves that I wanted, like that one, not broken. And I wanted some of the veins, the white veins that you see in the wave are leftovers from the previous wave that are receding. They're being sucked out and forming the new wave. And I wanted some of those because it felt like a vein, you know, like blood, and it felt human in a sense. And I wanted it before anything broke, and I wanted light coming through the wave at some place. And there are a couple of them like that in the show. The wave on the left is two waves that come together. You know, they're breaking here, and as it continues to roll, finally the two waves, the two rolls meet. And I saw that at one point, and I went, oh, I really would like to have one of those, you know, because that space in there just looks so magical. So I learned to look at waves in a way I hadn't seen them before. What I would see with my eye was not what I would capture in the camera. In the mangrove forest and in the cupola space, where I have all the mangrove pieces, I really played with color a lot more than anywhere else. And there's a grouping as you walk in on the right. I knew I had to have these 4 images in the show. I knew they were just a part of this show. And yet they did not appeal to me. What I did know that I needed to do, I took them in July when everything's very green and very lush. And I had to take all the green out of the images, not completely, because I didn't want it, but there's like a green copper to the leaves. And because of what I really wanted to focus the viewer on was the mangrove, not the greenery, not the lushness, but these roots. I've been to Paris maybe, I don't know, 5 times in my life. Every time I've gone, I've spent time with Monet's water lilies. The pieces on the left, I think, are very much influenced by that time period. Angustia is the title I gave to the pieces in the mangroves. The thing about the mangroves is that they are processors. Their job is incredibly difficult. They take fresh water and salt water and process it. And the fresh water that's coming down into the mangroves here is very polluted from the sugarcane fields. When they're burned, all that ash, and they're also spraying them with pesticides, all that comes into the river, which goes into the mangrove, into that estuary where the mangroves are. And their job is to clean that yucky water. Their job, they are doing the job we should be doing, you know. So for me, it's angustia. Es que ¿cómo puede ser que dejamos que esto sea de esta forma? You know, how is that possible that we are so irresponsible to our environment that we're, you know, allowing that to happen? One of the reasons that art is important to us in our lives is because it helps us see the world more clearly.